everyone present here and a very warm welcome to the Conference on Democracy, Dissent and Justice in India, locating dissent at the heart of democracy, organized by the Human Rights Society of Jindal Global Law School. The Human Rights Society is a student-led initiative which aims to provide a platform for research, discussions and action in the field of human rights. I am Pritha Paul, a second year LLB student, and I'll be moderating today's panel. I'm also a member of the Human Rights Society. So the panel discussion today is based on the role of independent journalism in protests. And we have with us as panelists today Sudarshana Chakraborty, Santosh Kumar, and Arfa Khanum Sherwani. Raghu Karnad was supposed to join us, but unfortunately he had to excuse himself from the panel due to an emergency. So I'll introduce you to the panelists and then we can dive straight into the discussion. Sudarshana is an independent journalist and a documentary filmmaker. She's an editorial team member of Ground Zero, a recent initiative at, it's a news portal, online news portal. Her area of work, both in journalism and filmmaking, includes gender, human rights, labor rights, and disability. Santosh is by training and by profession a biostatistician. He is also a labor researcher, trade union activist, and coordinator of an umbrella trade union called Majdoor Adhikar Sangharsh Abhiyan, MASA. He is an editorial team member of Workers' Unity. Arfa Khanum Sherwani, she'll be joining us in a few minutes. She's an award-winning journalist and a news anchor. She was the only Indian journalist to have reported on the 2014 Afghan presidential elections. After working with renowned media channels like NDTV, Rajya Sabha, she's currently a senior editor at The Wire. So today we'll be discussing the role of independent journalism in protests. And as we have seen, there's been a rising number of independent journalism initiatives. And as we also know, there have been various protests across, across the previous few years. So we'll be talking about that mainly. So let's dive straight in. Santosh, let's start with you. What do you think the independent journalism has to do with the organized force that is emerging from the new protests or the mass movements? And what role do you think it will be playing in the near future?
Okay, hi. Thanks for having me. First, I will start with my first language is not English, so I'm not very much comfortable with English, but I will try my best to speak.
That's all right. I think you can switch to Hindi also.
Yeah, in between. Okay. So that's so thanks Pritha and Jindal University to having me. The thing is that when we are discussing about the mass movement, so we have to define what the mass movement is. Basically, there are type of mass movement we have seen in the past. Basically, in last decades, starting from the Occupy Wall Street to Anna Hazare movement, anti-corruption, and we have seen then Arab Spring, Tunisia, Egypt, Syria, and all. So we have seen the independent media, YouTube, and alternative media has been in rise from this protest, from the mass movement. And even in the case of India, we have seen how independent in the mainstream media itself has covered the Anna movement. But in the case of recent movement, maybe the situation had changed after 2014 in context of CA NRC or currently what we are seeing in the peasant protest or Kisan Andolan. So this is very striking. Even if media is not just blackouting this whole protest, instead they are blaming, labeling, and instead they are in the mission to defame this movement. So why this is happening, I will try to explain these things. The earlier movement was a kind of a movement where youth and agitating protesters are articulating their demand in the framework of this system itself. The current movement, which is the Kisan movement, I will discuss most of the thing in the current Kisan movement because we are covering this Kisan movement extensively for last 3-4 months. The logic and the slogans, the demand of the Kisan movement is very much against the system and structure which the corporate media is very much part of. So this is their direct clash of their interest. We cannot see the mainstream media is not showing because they are in the fear, or they got intimidated by the state or maybe by the corporate. The simple logic is that the kind of demand and the articulation of this kind of movement is basically on the same premises where the corporate media is standing. So they are also against the logic of the corporate media. So this is the first thing, why this mass movement and the new kind of movement will be completely blackouting, and not just blackouting it, they have to bear the brunt of the mainstream media's ire. The second thing is that uh, we, like I said, I'm not in position to say they are just got intimidated and they are getting some benefit from this. No, they got a mission. The kind of class caste position of the media and the media professional they have their benefit and their alignment to the state, to the corporates, and to the benefit they are getting. So it is very much important. We have to understand the kind of upper caste media professionals, they are, why they are against it, because their interest is completely against the logic and articulation the Kisan movement is raising the things. The last thing I will tell how it is happened. So it is not happen in a one go. You can see after liberalization, privatizations policies implied in 80s throughout the world and 90s from our in country, there has been systematic erosion of the ground reporting. There is systematic erosion of the agriculture beat. There is systematic agriculture of the labor beat. So this has been happening over the period of time. Now the after 2014, everyone got a favorable government, who's the mission, and the interest is completely towards the Hindu forces, Hindu communal forces, as well as the corporate media. So this is the context which I will lay down on why this kind of media is not, mainstream media is not aligning with this mass movement, and how the alternative media can be an anchor in this context.
Thank you, Santosh. So, Darshana, would you like to add something to this? So, Darshana, can you hear me?
Hello, am I
Yes.
audible?
Yes, yes, you're audible.
Okay, okay. So, yes, thank you.
Your voice is breaking.
Hello, hello.
Yes, 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 you're audible now.
Important.
So, Darshana, your voice is breaking.
Hello, hello.
Yes,
Am I audible?
yes, you're audible.
Okay, okay. So, what I was feeling in this particular aspect of our discussion point is that mass movement is taking the future course of this country, and mass movement is becoming bigger every day. And the most important part that we have to keep in mind is that the corporate owned media houses will not telecast the part of this mass movement which are taking the youth, mainly the youth of our generation, of our country forward. And we cannot ignore the youth are taking up a very important role in this mass. And Santosh has pointed out rightly that the corporate owned Hindu owned media houses, they were against this kind of mass. As someone from ground zero who are extensively operating on West Bengal, and am I audible, Pritha? Hello?
Yes, but your voice is breaking a little.
Okay, I think there is a bit of network problem because where I am sitting, there is a kind of network problem maybe.
Yeah, you're
Hello?
audible now. Yes.
Okay, okay, okay. So extensively we are working in West Bengal, and maybe you will be knowing that right now we are the election is knocking at our door, and right now there is campaigns, there are like mass movements which are going against the fascist government and the role that they're playing. But when we are looking into the coverages that the mainstream media are doing, we will see mostly that they are either taking parts of one party or the other. So here comes the role of alternative media, because we truly believe that there is a kind of ideology that we have to follow, that while we are doing stories or while we are covering news, we have to be impartial. We may belong to we may be supporting any kind of political ideology, but while we are working as a reporter and in an alternative media, we are there because we are believing in a particular political ideology and social transformation. That's why we are not into any corporate owned media houses. That's why we have formed our own independent media houses, facing all odds and confronting the political and social pressures that we always face. And I think that a long part, or a major part of our journalism, of our reporting, comes from the mass movement itself. We often see that whatever we journalists do, we get a good support from the people who are involved with these mass movements. They often play the role of citizen reporters. They often supply us with information, with support, with interviews, with visuals, with everything. And we are
Sorry, Sudarshana, we lost you.
media are completely interlinked. I believe that, and I think that the corporate houses that are becoming bigger every day with all kinds of
Sudarshana, we lost you again.
So be joining us. We have to be very much interconnected. We have to share information. We have to share visuals among us. We have to share stories and news articles among us, so that we can build what should I say? We can build a team of us, which can become part of the mass movement itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudarshana. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think only when, especially because independent journalism also lacks resources, unlike the big corporate funded media houses, right? So only when these small independent initiatives can merge forces will they be able to be truly successful. But I think I would like to ask this as a continuation of what Santosh also said, that the social position of these people who are working in these corporate funded media houses or the mainstream media also plays a role, because their social position, their political position is beneficial to them. So they will obviously not speak out against the structure that is existing. So Sudarshana, do you think that there is this behavior, there is a possibility of this behavior also being permeating into independent journalism, that the exclusionary, because I'm saying this, I'll tell you why, because I know uh, you covered the CA movement and the farmers movement as well. And there was a difference in the discourse, that the CA protesters were termed to be terrorists immediately, and the farmers movement, even though it did attract criticism, it wasn't as harsh as the CA movement. So do you think that this identity politics, or this identity criticism also can be found in independent journalism, and how do we solve that issue?
So what
Sudarshana, your voice is breaking. It's still breaking, Sudarshana.
Hello, hello.
Yes, yes, yes.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you're
Right?
Yes.
Okay, okay, okay. So what I was saying that actually this is kind of a tricky question that you have asked, but I'll try to answer that. Uh, the thing that I was saying in the previous answer of mine, that we are here, we have formed our different independent media initiatives because the people, as we are participating, we believe in a certain kind of political ideology which reflects in our journalistic works, right? And that's why we are here together. I think that Santosh will also agree, and the other panelists will also agree. On we will that when we
Sudarshana, your voice is breaking.
okay, okay. Am I audible? Am I?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. But we know that exactly what we have to project. We have the right to even criticize these mass movements, because if there are some kind of loopholes in the mass movements, we are in a position where we can like go and criticize and ask questions which are not always comfortable to the people who are engaged with the movements. But we know that we hold such position because they know our media initiatives, be it Ground Zero, be it like Workers Unity, be it Wire, whatever. So they know that we have such credibilities which they see in our everyday reporting, which they see in our feature stories, which they see in our stories, in our visuals, in our photographs, where they can find that we are standing hand in hand with them. We are not the corporate houses. We'll just go. I can give you an example from a recent rally that has been organized in Kolkata. Maybe all of us will know that there is a big rally on 10th of March, and there is this newly formed Bengali news channel, which is the part of a big national news media house. So one of the reporters went there, and she started to misreporting just from the ground. And there were people who were like ready to do like, even I'm using the term, even they were ready to harm her because they were extremely angry. And but the organizers went there and told her that, see, we are here, you can ask us questions, and we are here to assure that you are secured and everything. So people know, but there are reporters from independent media houses. They were going there, they were asking questions, and they're asking also questions which are maybe which were not comfortable, but they're ready to answer those questions because they know that whatever will be reported in those media houses, those will be truths, those will be realities that will be that will be projected, those will be their words, and they will not be twerked. So they have this faith on these media houses, which they are lacking day by day. The corporate media houses are lacking every day. And so I believe that we still have that space, and we still have that faith on us, which we shouldn't in any case we shouldn't lose those faith and trust that they have on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudarshana. Santosh, would you like to add something? Because I know that, even within the farmers movement, there are concerns regarding Dalit farmers and Dalit laborers. And you've been covering that quite well. So would you like to comment on this?
Surely. So this is very much important. So when once we as a media, independent media, go to the movement, and if we have some kind of the familiarity with the protest, familiarity with the unions, familiarity and access with the different organization. So first thing, like the Sudarsana said, they have trust and they have they don't have any trust issue. They know if we are raising some question, if we are raising some contradictions issues. So this is for the betterment of the movement, not from the outsider critic. They took it as a insider critics. Once forward movement started, and there is a long history in India of the left movement, the contradiction between the peasants and the agricultural labor, the contradiction between Jat Kisan landed community versus Dalit landless agriculture community in Punjab. And in this lockdown itself, in May, March, April, May, in the time of lockdown, when Bihari migrant workers didn't show up to the Punjab agricultural land due to lockdown, the usual contradiction between the landless Dalit laborer have raised the issue of the minimum wage or the wage of around 200 to 250 rupees, which was earlier negotiable due to ability of the larger forces on the ground. But in the absence of the Bihari migrant worker this time, they have raised their wages this time, and then they have faced the lashes and they boycotted from the this same landed community. So we have raised this question, how this has happened. This happened in the Malwa region. And so one of the interesting thing we have observed that there are some organizations, there are some peasant organizations which also are closely working with the agricultural labor union. So like Bharatiya Kisan Union Ekta Ugraha, which is the largest forces in Tikri border, have also very good coordination with Punjab Khet Mazdoor Union. So there is a Kirti Kisan Union, which is very large organization, which they have the history into the 30s Praja Mandal movement, Kirti Kisan Party, and they have very good workers, Dalit organization, and this is not the trade union which they are in between, somewhere between the peasant organization and trade union, and the name is Jamin Prapti Sangharsh Committee. So they are basically organization of the Dalit landless laborer who are claiming their common land. So we have raised this question, and no one has taken this otherwise. They took us very seriously. They accepted it. This is the problem in Punjab, the Jat landed community, and this exists, this contradiction exists. But apart from all these things, this is a bigger movement. This we are fighting against the corporate, and this small contradiction we are very much here to resolve. And this movement have bridged this gap. This movement has bridged the gap between the Dalit and Jat peasant. This movement has bridged the gap between Haryana and Punjab. You know how much enmity between Haryana and Punjab due to either the Hindi language and Punjabi language happened in 62 division, or Satluj Jamuna link division. This movement has also bridged the gap in Western UP between the Muzaffarnagar riots, Muslims victims, and as well as the Western UP Jat. So we have seen and we have raised this question, but everyone taken this seriously, recognized it, committed. We will do this thing, and we have seen in 12th of last month there is a large rally in Barnala, which was organized basically by the Khet Mazdoor Union in support of Kisan Union. And this coming 15th March, there is a very large gathering is happening in Bhatinda from the Agricultural Labor Union. So we should not what we can say, we should raise the contradiction, we should raise our question, but it should be the internal critique, and it should be the critique which should be addressed in a comradier manner, not to flash the differences. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Santosh. Hello, Arfa. Welcome. Just to update you, I welcome. Just to update you on what we are discussing, we are basically discussing the the space of independent journalism in the mass movements that are emerging and that have emerged in the last few years, we see. And what we were right now discussing is how there are internal contradictions within the independent journalism initiatives. Say the exclusion of certain communities, even that we find in the corporate media, that we may also find within the independent journalism initiatives. So that is what we were talking about. Just to give you an example, say the Disha Ravi case and the Nodeep Kaur case, the way they got coverage, the difference in the coverage and the difference one would say, emerging from their different backgrounds. So that is what we were discussing. If you would like to make a comment on that.
Well, thank you very much. I heard some bits of what you were discussing, but I think I totally agree that we are not doing as good as we should. I mean, though at The Wire, people like me, I have a show dedicated to people from the marginalized communities, and that is called Hum Bhi Bharat, which means we too are India. And that's primarily was the reason that there was this very, I would say, glaring gap that I realized during my years of journalism, that I thought maybe we are again and again passing on the mic to the same people, and we become sometimes, while we claim that we are the media, we are the alternate media, or we are the real media, sometimes it becomes difficult then to also differentiate us from the same mainstream media, which gives platforms to the Savarnas, the people who've always been a part of, I would say, the establishment, even if they are not elected member of the parliament, or they are not prime ministers or ministers or MPs, but still, you know, they are essentially the people who have created this structure where only they decide that what kind of people will eventually be allowed to speak, what issues do we really discuss. But then, you know, essentially what happens is that even to give you an example, that while doing this program, this gets the minimum, or I would say a very few people, very few takers. Whenever I discuss issue of, say, of sanitization workers, I discuss issues of Dalits, tribals. So I would say that people like that, though even Muslims are marginalized, but Muslims are considered a glamorously marginalized community. They still make headlines. But when we talk about Dalits, for that matter, or farmers, for now, I mean, we can say this is an exception, but otherwise, for the rest of so many years that I've done my journalism, minimum, I would say it's so difficult to even get a few thousand views. So again, it goes back to the same structure that maybe people from the marginalized community do not have access to internet, do not have access to maybe their own devices. They do not have maybe awareness that there are programs for them like this. So first of all, they are not in a position, they are not empowered enough, and internet, for whatever claims the government may make and whatever we might think that, okay, maybe 30 crores people, if I'm not wrong, 30 or 35 crore people at the moment have internet connection, they use social media. But at the same time, you know, there are very few people who are there to watch news programs or analysis related to the marginalized communities. So rest of the communities, which are dominant communities who have access to internet and devices, they are indifferent. And there is complete apathy towards the issues of the marginalized communities and even those people. But then having said that, it is very important to do issues, to raise issues, to do stories, even if these stories are not being published in the mainline newspaper. So I'll tell you what is, so the problem is that we may discuss it from a very academic approach. But for someone like me, a functioning journalist, you know, who has to go through this on a daily basis. So what happens is that when Disha Ravi is covered in mainstream newspapers, websites, and also news channels, this automatically becomes an obvious topic to discuss. When Norddeeps comes in, then of course I will feel as a responsibility that I should, even if, you know, not many people watch it. I would still do it. But there are a lot of other issues which are beyond people going to jail, or which is beyond, you know, people involved in the protest movements, which are day-to-day issues, and which really need time. But then, you know, nobody's publishing them. So I do not get any first-hand information through newspapers or journals or news channels. So it has to be me, or maybe people like me, you know, my reporters or my co-workers who will go and find out whether something like this is happening. So this becomes, unfortunately, sadly, a part of this whole cycle where, since nobody else is talking about it, and there is already, people like me are so consumed with whatever is happening, and we are just 35, 40 people, you know, my video team, which I lead, it barely has half a dozen people, even less than that. So, you know, so there is a dearth of resources, manpower, everything. And if I had a team, say, of not 5 people, but 50 people, maybe I would have sent out 10 of my reporters to just find out what's happening to the Dalit communities, my you know, tribals, to you know, women's issues and farmers and laborers, to Northeast, to Kashmir. But incidentally, since we do not get much of the coverage of these issues in mainline newspapers, their news channels, not much of academic and research work, then it becomes so much more difficult for people like me to also pick up issues and then discuss them. So I'm just trying to tell you the practical aspects of the problem that, I mean, as a matter of principle, I am with you on this, and I would want issues of the marginalized to come to the fore, but at the same time, there are so many practical problems that come in the way of people like me.
Absolutely. I think just before you joined, we were talking about how there's a lack of resource in independent media as opposed to the corporate funded media, media houses, and why there's a greater need to join forces, which is why there's a need for the independent media and the people to come together to provide news and to provide what is happening within communities. Sudarshana, am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
So drawing from this, I know that Ground Zero, The Wire, and Workers Unity also, they are quite active on social media as well. And social media is a very important, important platform in terms of reaching out to the masses. But again, at the same time, it is also a platform that which fake news reaches the masses. So it's like there's a duality to it, that the platform that you're using to reach to the masses, the same platform is being used by those who are spreading fake news, say the IT cell, and these memes, through memes and through WhatsApp forwards and whatnot. So we see that there was selective removal of content during the CA protests, and even pages dedicated to the farmers' protests. And so what role do you think social media platforms play when it comes to independent journalism and dissent? And how do we address this conflict?
Okay. So, do you want me to answer?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello. Okay. Okay. Basically, from Ground Zero, what I can say that we will be completing our 3 years in this April. And for a long time, we were like sharing our stories and our visuals, our photographs only on our website. And for the at the beginning, we are not much active on social media. Like, we have our own handles on social media, and we were just sharing our stories and our had our Ground Zero Facebook page also from the very beginning, but we were not that active on that page. Then there came a time when we thought that okay, fine, we are doing this website and we are reaching out to people. People are becoming more aware about our news portal, but we should be more active on our social media handle also, because these are the places where people are mostly interested to read the news or view the stories and see the photographs also. So we're still
Your
not very
voice
much
is
active on
breaking.
Instagram. Hello? Hello?
Yes. You're audible now. Yes.
Yes. So we are not very much active on other social media platforms, but on Facebook and on Twitter, we have picked up the pace. So what we are watching, and again, there is some kind of our own opinion and our own ideology also, that we didn't we didn't go for boosting our page and doing all those stuffs. We used to believe that we will do whatever we can through sharing our stories, and if we are doing good stuffs, then people will watch us, people will share our stories just like that. But right now we are also thinking that no, if it's the need of the hour, if it's the need of the time, so we have to do this kind of boosting and everything to reach out more people and to confront this fake, as we were pointing out, this fake news and this deleting of the real sorry, deleting of real content, the truth from the news, from what we call the news. And so, yes, we are providing the stories which we are not doing in detail, or the photographs which are speaking 1,000 words. We are sharing those on our social media handles, mainly on Facebook page. And we think from our Ground Zero News portal that the if we share more information on everyday basis from the reality that we are facing, there will be a kind of force that can stand against the fake news forces. And we have a thing called alt news also. We can share our own stories. We can share not only from Ground Zero. Yes, we are sharing mostly our own stories, but we can share others' stories also, as I was talking before, that we should share our own stories to build up a joint force. And we can say that recently, when we all were talking about like Nodeep and Disha and all these girls were into prison, they're fighting this government, suddenly there popped up a news
Darshana, we lost you.
Hello?
Yes, yes, yes,
Am I
yes.
audible?
You were talking about,
Yes.
yes, you were talking about Nodeep and
Yes, yes. So I was telling that when there is a lot of news coming out on Nolip and Disha and their imprisonment and how they are being tortured in jail and all, then suddenly news popped up, a very old news of an activist, a tribal activist, a woman tribal activist from Odisha, and like her imprisonment. And we all knew that that was an old news. That wasn't a recent news that popped up like that. And people were just started sharing that, and that became viral. And then we went out and we shared our stories, and we told that, see, this is an old story. Concentrate on the real stories that we are doing. We mean the independent media, not only our house, that we are doing. And just stop making viral these stories which are not from the present. These are, yes, these are true stories also. These people are also fighting, but do concentrate on the on present and share which are like coming from different parts of the country right now. So I think that we have to be alert more. We have to remain alert, and we have to keep on sharing each other's stories. And we should keep an open eye where and who are sharing these kind of fake stories, or stories where the main content has been deleted. And this is our duty. We don't only publicize our own, but also where make them aware about the stories that go viral and which are not stories.
thank you, Sudarshana. Alpha, your work has, constantly focused on minorities and marginalized communities. And, it constantly obviously rattles the existing power structures. And, like Sudarshana said, it's important to source check where we are getting our news from. And on top of that, there are obviously allegations that the opposition has conspired with the protesters and the journalists, and they are trying to defame the current government, whichever government comes to power. So how do we determine the reliability of sources in independent journalism? Is there
Yeah.
a
First of all, it's very funny for people to blame that, if you were there to sell yourself, you would rather sell it to the highest bidder. You rather would sell yourself to maybe people who are in power and who are likely to be in power for the next several years, instead of, say, aligning with people who are not in power, who have not been in power for the last several years, and there is no possibility that they will ever be. So I think it would be very foolish of us to sell ourselves to maybe people that we get ourselves, जैसे कहते हैं कि बदनाम भी हुए और मिला भी कुछ नहीं. So anyway, तो ये बदनामी बिल्कुल बेकार की है. As for the sources, I think how I rely on my sources, and I'm not saying that I get them 100% correct, but how I do it is that when when I know that there is a news piece which has several stakeholders and which is likely to define maybe a lot more than what I think it should, then I would check it from several sources. Like my training at NDTV has been that whatever used to display on NDTV, and I'm talking about 9-10 years ago, even till then it used to have such kind of a credibility that all other news channels, if it is flashed on NDTV, they would, even without checking twice, they would flash it on their channels. Having said that, I would say it is, for example, I would mostly go for the first-hand information. And if there is a critical story, then I would really check it from at least 3 different sources. If I'm getting a news item that I want to discuss or I want to check, then at least 3 different websites. Because even if we were to believe that all of this pro-establishment media is publishing the same stuff, even then the business is so competitive that it's almost nearly impossible for all these editors to sit in one room and decide that this is going to be the headline tomorrow. Or this is going to be the lead tomorrow. So I would say even with all this compromised media, I would still say that I would check at least from 3 sources. And this is what I even tell people, that when you want to determine fake news, 3 different sources, then also see, for example, if I am looking at farmers' protests, and if there is a news break on a channel, which I know is also a stakeholders, and also a direct beneficiary of the farm laws. So if I know that that news network is also the biggest news network in India, so that's the irony of our time, that in 21st century Indian democracy, the company, the corporate house that now has the maximum stake in news and runs the biggest news network in India is also reporting on the farmers' protests, also has stakes and is the direct beneficiary of the farm laws. So the irony couldn't have been bigger than this, that how are you even supposed to even trust them when they say something as crucial, something like, anchors going to the ground and saying, oh, farmers' protest is over, or this is the last night of farmers' protest. So I would never believe them unless I check it from 3 different sources, because I know that even for this very compromised media, it's nearly impossible that 3 different reporters from 3 different networks would go to the same site and announce the same thing. So I would say this would be ideally the way I would look at it.
Thank you, Arfa. I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think when I was following, the farmers' protest right after 26 January, I think there were news that Rakesh Tikait surrendered to the government, and it was all over, and it was so shocking. But obviously that was
this is exactly what I'm talking about. So there was a news anchor from Sabse Tez channel. She literally tweeted saying farmers protest ki kisan pradarshan ki aakhri raat. So she literally tweeted that, and right after that, just maybe within a matter of 5 hours, the protest was like 5 times bigger and larger than what it was earlier.
Yes. I think right after that, the farmers from UP began walking towards the Delhi border. Santosh, you have obviously covered the farmers' protests on the ground very extensively, and you have also covered workers' movement, the very famous Maruti movement, and the workers. So these are things that have serious consequences for the government and the big corporates, and obviously they will not take it lying down. They obviously try to push back, and we recently saw what happened to journalist Mandeep Punya, and this is not something that is surprising, but what sort of systemic hindrances do you experience while reporting on field, and how do you overcome them?
Okay, so first I will add to what Arfa said about this 26th night experience. So how these things work actually, that was the very first hand experience for us, and for Workers Unity, the highest coverage till date was that night, 28th night. So fortunately we were there at the night of 28th from 8 p.m. 9 p.m. onwards, and we were there till 3 a.m. in the morning. So suddenly we got to know that there is a police cam down is likely to be happen, and all these things are planning to happen. So we went there, and then we started doing a live, and the current live, the live at the 28th of Jan was the highest till history of the workers unity. It was concurrently seen by more than 10,000 people at the go, and this whole report was seen by more than 40 lakhs people in the next coming 2-3 days. So this is the benefit we got for the reporting from the ground. So that is the importance we learned. If you are on the ground, so there is a two benefit. Once you will get news on the real time. The second thing, there is no chance of fake news because you are on the ground and you are reporting from the ground itself. So there is no chances of getting the version of the others. So this is one of the things. What you are telling about this systematic hindrance, yes, when we have started in 2000, Workers Unity started in 3 years before, and before that we were the part of the larger media collective. It's called Sanhati.com, and we were reporting from Maruti movement in 2010, 11, 12 for the Sanhati. Yeah, so one of the major lack we can face. Every movement and every protest have a very nuanced sense of history, context, and their complicated relationship with the current establishment, and basically the policy related analysis. So we don't have resources for analyzing the policies for the workers, what is the real consequences, the kind of academic background peoples which may not be converted into the academic video or maybe academic paper, but it is required to understand the context of the movement. For example, for the current Kisan Andolan, so there are lots of history why this Haryana Punjab Kisans are agitating first. So we were wondering how this whole thing, why people are referring from the Banda Bahadur in 16th century, where 1712 when Banda Bahadur came and done the land reform, and then there is Land Alienation Act of 1900, then 1907 there is a Pagdi Sambhal Jata movement, and then there is lots of history in Punjab of the left, right from the Gadar movement to Prajamandal movement so there are a series of movements happening in Punjab, basically from the agrarian context, and we don't have anyone who can differ and he can analyze for us. So then we went to we have done an interview with the Hartosh Bal, and he is one of the senior journalists who have very good ground on the Sikh history, Punjab history, as well as the left union history. So one of the major problem in independent media is also sometimes for some of the facts lacks rigorous research. So this kind of things which we where we have to do policy analysis. If there is a 4 labor law has been came out after the just 3 agriculture, what all nuances we have to understand, what all nuances we have to report. So this is one of the things which we faces very frequently. The other thing is that the kind of we are totally dependent on the social media, and the kind of algorithm of social media, Facebook, Google, YouTube, is that we can't compete with the, even on the social media, the kind of algorithm perceived by the different big houses and the kind of the news aggregator, we always lack. Even with the fantastic reporting, with the fantastic interview, we never come into the chartbusters or maybe into the. So this kind of things where even we are consistently doing a reporting, doing some kind of interview, but this is always running into our very close circle, maybe our friends, family, and close acquainted circle, but it is not going or maybe going beyond the usual boundary. So this is one of the things which we are facing.
I would like to add to what Santosh is saying. Santosh, I of course agree that it's more or less it becomes the same echo chamber where we are saying things and the same people are listening to us. But I would say, and I take a lot of pride in telling you that the wires may have broken that code, may have cracked that code. Like average views for the farmers protest videos that I have covered is 3 million, trust me. So I'm saying there are so many people watching the coverage of farmers movement, or for that matter, the anti-CA movement that was last year. This year, I think it has broken even our own records.
Yeah.
So there are several million people watching The Wire. When I go to the field, I mean, I've been someone who's been on the largest news networks I've worked with. But trust me, the kind of fanfare, the kind of following, I mean, even at the cost of sounding very immodest, I am telling you that, you know, at least amongst the marginalized communities, the religious minorities, farmers, laborers, Dalits, tribals, and I mean saying like socially and politically disempowered communities. I would say that people, when I went to Uttar Pradesh for that matter, I want to give you this small example, and this should also cheer you up. I went to Uttar Pradesh in Shamli to cover the protest, and so in the usual days, the state of affairs in India is such that me, someone with such predominantly Muslim identity, I wouldn't really go to like a village in Western Uttar Pradesh and consider myself safe enough to go on my own, right? But this was before farmers movement. After farmers movement, I still decided to go, but still took one of my colleagues along, thinking that I would be maybe safer with him than just going all alone. But there, when I reached, you know, there was like a euphoria amongst the farmers leaders. They were fighting with each other. कि मुझे अपने घर खाना खिलाने कौन लेके जाएगा इसके लिए. They were fighting with each other. So just to give you an example that, you know, how much has changed in India during this farmers movement. I mean, it may not have, we still have the same laws, and they are not reversed and they are not repealed. But at the same time, beyond the stated goal of what the farmers movement was about, there is so much else that has changed. They did not think of me then as like a mere Muslim who they do not want to like, even if they would have. I come from Western UP, so I'm one of them. You know, I'm their own, one of their own. But still, I wouldn't have trusted these people because I know the kind of, you know, this hate factory, this communalism laboratory that the saffron forces have created, especially my own, birthplace, Western UP. But things have changed so much. And there was this young guy who came up to me and said, दूर से आवाज देकर, मैडम मुझे आपसे कुछ कहना है, मैडम मुझे आपसे कुछ कहना है. Finally, like for 2-3 hours, he was just kind of hovering around me, and then I just couldn't listen to him because there were too many other people to attend to, and I was also working there.
Yeah,
I was doing my job, recording my video, and then finally, I listened to him towards the end of it and said, मैडम मैं आपको गालियां बकता था, मैं आपसे बहुत नफरत करता था, मैं आपकी जान लेना चाहता था, मैं ही वो आदमी हूँ जो आपके नीचे, मैं गाली नहीं बताऊंगी आपको, मुझे बोल रहा था कि मैं ही वो आदमी हूँ जो आपके हर वीडियो के नीचे फलां गाली लिख के जाता था. मैं आपसे नफरत करता था because I used to think that you were a separatist, you were pro-Pakistan, since I was covering CAA. So he developed all of this hate for me because I was covering the CAA movement. And then he saw the same woman covering the farmers' protest. And not the media that he had trusted so far. And he was the guy, he said, Mr. Modi को मैंने प्राइम मिनिस्टर बनाने के लिए 2013 में गंगा नहा के आया था. मैंने शपथ ली थी, मैंने चोटी बांधी थी कि अगर जो है वो जब तक वो प्राइम मिनिस्टर नहीं बनेंगे मैं ये सब करूंगा. So that kind of a bhakt, you know, that kind of a committed guy who said he used to hate me to the core. So there is so much that people and platform like yours and ours, we are changing. So what we are doing is really important. I want to tell you this. And what we are doing, it has really great impact on the ground. If it was not for people like you and me and others on this panel, the so-called alternate media, trust me, like people would never have known whether CA was a good law or not, whether, you know, farm laws was, in fact, the Godi media, the compliant media would have rather convinced them that this was good for them. Like they keep saying this, they keep argue in favor of this. This is only for people like me and you and other people, the alternate media, that farmers or Muslims or Dalits and tribals and laborers know about their rights and know what's happening in the country. I mean, for God forbid, if we disappear tomorrow, trust me, the largest democracy of the world will turn into a one deep black hole where no information without the approval of the government comes in or goes out.
I completely agree, Arfa. I saw you on 8th of March when you came here on Ugrahan stage, and I can see there are lots of young girls are approaching you, and I can completely agree with you. The same with you. For the example, currently I came here on the Ugrahan stage to cover one of the workers program today. And when I said I have to take a call, so I'm sitting in one of the trolley nearby, and they have given me the password and Wi-Fi and all these things. The kind of love and affection we are getting from the ground is really really telling it is worth to cover it. So I can understand. I am completely agree with you.
And the camaraderie that I saw, like when I go there to cover farmers' protests, they will say, so they don't understand it as a my duty, my responsibility to do it. They think of it as a favor because rest of the media, so-called big media, is not doing it. So they will say, "Madam, आप हमारे लिए इतना कुछ कर रही हैं, आप हमारे लिए दिल्ली से cover करने आई हैं, हम आपके लिए क्या कर सकते हैं?" So somebody is offering me कि गन्ना ले जाओ, कुछ कह रहे हैं कि गुड़ ले जाओ.
बिल्कुल. बिल्कुल. I can.
So there is so much more that happens beyond the relationship of the audience and your readers, your viewers, and a journalist. I thought maybe this was the real bond, and I felt, I don't know whether this is stupid to say, but this is, for me, is the real patriotism. When all of these walls demolish, when you are one people in that moment. I was a reporter covering it. They are the protesters, and we are one people. They're offering me food, and I'm covering them. And this is what real patriotism, real nationalism, and that Indianness, that you feel it and gives you goosebumps. That this is what it is. This is what an Indian, what an Indian means to me. What being an Indian means to me.
Yeah, if Pritha, if you allow, I want to add or two lines here.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So like what I am Arfa is sharing. So abhi kya hua ki, so there is one famous event is coming. 18th of March is the celebration of Paris Commune. So it happened in 1871. So this is 150th anniversary of Paris Commune. So कुछ लोग मुझे पूछ रहे थे कि तुम्हारा what is your experience with farmers movement, क्योंकि एक commune type का यहाँ बन चुका है. So if I am going to farmers movement, if I am going to टिकरी stage, उग्रहा stage, so I am कह रहे हैं कि ये 1871 में एक पेरिस कम्यून हुआ था. यहाँ भी हम एक कम्यून में रह रहे हैं. यहाँ पे मैं हमेशा जब भी आता हूँ तो मैं कहाँ खाना खा रहा हूँ, कहाँ पे थोड़ा देर के लिए अगर लेटना है, कहाँ अगर मेरे ट्राइपॉड में कुछ प्रॉब्लम आ जाता है तो वहाँ कोई ठीक कर देता है, कोई मुझे ऐसे बोल देता है. तो द काइंड ऑफ कॉमेडी एंड द लव एंड अफेक्शन एंड द इकोसिस्टम वी हैव बिल्ट, ये like Arfa saying कि जो भी होगा मूवमेंट का, whatever we will win or will whatever it will happen, but हमेशा से मैं एक बार जोगिंदर सिंह गुराहा से बात कर रहा था, उन्होंने बोला कि हम तो जीत चुके हैं, ये बाकी लॉ हो चाहे ना हो, जो whatever we have achieved it is much more than what the we are aspired to be. So हम यहाँ पे 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 महिलाओं को लेके 8 मार्च को 3 दिन पहले इतना बड़ा सभा किया. दिस इज आवर अचीवमेंट. कि कोई पूछता है कि इस आंदोलन ने क्या अचीव किया है, तो उन्होंने बोला है कि 70,000 महिलाएं 8 मार्च को यहाँ आई है, ये अचीवमेंट है इस आंदोलन में. So yeah.
So Darshana, do you want to add something?
Were saying that we become a part of this movement. We actually, as journalists, we do our duties and we present the truth and the reality, but we become also a part of that movement. And as Arfa was mentioning, yes, we get goosebumps when we are in the field and we were talking to the people, the women, the laborers, and it feels great when some people just call up and say, we are doing this movement and where are you? Where is ground zero? So in East Bengal, in and districts, people are saying that we know that mainstream media will not. Why aren't you here? So now we have to call you and tell you that there is things. So we have somehow in our own capacity, we have made up this kind of camaraderie and this kind of faith on our reporting, and like they are okay. You don't have to come if you. We operate in a very small. With a very small human resource, so they know that we are not able to reach everywhere. So they're like, okay, you don't have to come. We can report for you. You just edit those parts, whatever you need. You call us. We will send you visuals and make a report for us. So that I was telling you that like this, citizens reporters are now, and they are ready to. They are owning up this space. They're owning up this media houses as their own, and they're and everything. So yeah, we are happy for it.
Absolutely, this is very inspiring, and in the spirit of having this intimate conversation, I must say when I visited even during the CA protests and even during the farmers protest. I had visited the site, and it is absolutely like you're describing. You know, they gave us blankets, because I was staying overnight at the at Shaheen Bagh, and they gave us blankets, and they gave us tea, and they you know, they set tables for us to sleep on, because we had traveled a long way. And I think it got over, the program that we were there for got over at around 4:30 in the morning, and somebody dropped us to the metro station. They said, well, you don't have to go alone. How will you go alone at this hour, and you'll not get anything, so let us drop you. So it's absolutely. And in the farmers protest, you know, we traveled in tractors, and you know, every tent that we entered gave us milk and gave us, you know, food, and they were like, you have to. And we're like, no, we're not here for this, we just want to talk to you. And they were adamant, because you know, that sense of belonging is something that we all crave, right? So I completely agree with all three of you when you say that it's more than just the mainstream protest. It's resistance in general that resides in belongingness with one another, and that is something that I think media plays a huge role in. Sudarshana, I will come to you, and I want to ask you, how important do you think advocacy journalism is in these days, and whether it's, you know, one thing is objectively reporting facts so that people find out what is happening and what is the issue, and the other thing is having a stance and having a strong stand of your own, so that people know how to respond to what is happening, because there is so much going on in favor of the already structured power, already systemic power structures. So in order to break that, is it important for you to put forth a view, or do you think it is more important to objectively just state the facts?
Uh, in one word, the answer is yes. I believe that we have to carry on. We have to do the advocacy journalism right now, because other than that, we don't have any other option, because the forces which are standing opposite us, they're stronger, and stronger in the quantity. So yes, we are growing in numbers, but until and unless we take a stance, we take our own stand, it will become tough. It will become very challenging for us to stay like this. So yes, in one part we have to report objectively, we have to report the truth, whatever we are watching. But when we are writing, or we are doing videos of, we are writing something analytical, we are writing a future story, or presenting a video and in story, so there we have to take a stand. Like when we are seeing that there are protests going against the vandalizing of women's modesty, and their protest that is going on in our state right now, and the fascist parties, and the parties which don't believe in women's liberation and their stance. They are doing everything wrong that can be done to them. We are reporting on that. But when we see that there is some kind of, misinterpretation of that story, we have to take a stance. Like we are reporting on the protests that women are making, while they are facing this kind of trolling on social media for saying something against the fascist government. But when that is taking a political stance which may go against the general women protest that is going on in our country, or the things that we say against the trolling and against the male chauvinistic nature. So we have to criticize, and we have to put forth our own stance also. That see, these are the things that we generally avoid. And while you are talking about women's protest, you are projecting that in your protest that can't be that can't go along. So while we are reporting something, we should keep our mind open, that we should be in that position also, where we can present our own analysis, our own criticism maybe, and our own view while projecting or while advocating for a particular ideology, a particular, what should I say, a particular belief that we are projecting through our own portals or our own media houses. So we have to do that.
Thank you so much, Sudarshana. Arfa, recently, if I'm not mistaken, The Wire challenged the new IT rules. So I would like you to talk about that a little bit, because a lot of people have expressed satisfaction with the new rules, saying that there will be a uniform codified mechanism to deal with content, online content now. However, if we take a closer look at what the rules say, the government has a huge discretion to selectively direct the intermediaries to take down posts, right? On top of that, India does not even have a data protection regulation like the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. And there have been fears that the new rules will lead to serious breach of our right to privacy, as well as curbing free speech. I think a Manipur-based news portal had recently been served with a notice under the rules, and there was huge backlash on that. So, what implications do you think the new rules will have on independent journalism and dissent?
I would say it has huge implications, and if it's not countered, if it's not, there's no pushback, then trust me, alternate media or any truthful reportage of the state of affairs in India would be just over, because that's going to be now, it's going to be subjected to the government's approval, whether what we can broadcast and what we can't. And that too, we live in a world where the biggest fake factory, the biggest fake news factory is run by people who are part of the establishment, and this has not been proven just once, maybe several times over. The biggest leaders in this country who are running the country at the moment, they say whatever we have, and they say it from a public platform, that whatever truths or lies we have the machinery, the mechanism to broadcast it to as many people as we want. And then he gives an example and says that, look, this was not true, but our machinery transmitted it to as many people as we wanted to it. So he's alerting the people not to do it, his followers, but at the same time, he's saying that we have. So when the government, whatever the news items are, favorable to them, that would be considered as news, and the things that they do not like would be considered as fake news. I think it's very dangerous. It has to be countered, and not just countered by, I would say, the journalists, the digital networks, but should be countered and resisted by people in general. Because what I do as a journalist, what we do as media platform, we do it for people's right to know, their right to information. So now when I cannot inform my audience, my readers and viewers the way I want to, if I have to go through 5 different filters before I can transmit and broadcast news to my viewers, that is directly, this will have impact on my audience. So it is, as much as it is for me as a journalist, as it is for the people of India. So this is not just an anti-journalist, an anti-free speech, free media rules, but it is actually an anti-people rules, which are directly going to impact people's right to know. This should be looked at from this perspective. And in a democracy, what is a democracy? Even if for all international organization institutions which are saying that we are now an electoral autocracy, I would say that even for us to know whether elections are taking place fairly or not, I should be allowed to fairly, freely, without fear and favor, be able to report on politics and policies. So I would say these new rules are dangerous for the people of India, dangerous for the journalists, dangerous for the survival of digital media, and dangerous for the people of the largest democracy of the world. If there is no free media, there is no free country, there are no free people. So the media freedom directly is proportional to the freedom of the people and freedom of the country.
Right. Before we continue, I think Sudarshana has to leave. She's in the middle of something. Sudarshana?
Yeah.
Do you have any last comments before you leave?
just that it was wonderful to be on this panel and listening to Arfa and Santosh. And I hope that in the coming days, we will be there together as a force to fight against this fascist government and their actions that are going on. And best of luck to all of us. Thank you. And thank you,
Thank you
Preetha,
so
for this
much.
conference. Yes.
Thank you so much for joining, Sudarshana.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Arfa, let's continue from where we left off. This is, I think, the IT rules is a recent, development on a series of restrictions that were already there on journalism and especially independent journalism. We already had criminal defamation, the consequences of which we recently saw with the MJ Akbar and Priya Ramani case. On top of that, we had sedition, we have contempt of court, we have UAPA. And these are set to affect independent journalists and small media houses disproportionately, right? So I would ask you, how is that, and why does it affect independent journalists more than it does corporate media houses? I think one answer is obvious, that they usually belong to the corporate houses, the corporate media houses or big media houses belong to the government, or the people who are already in power. But apart from that also, if there is something that you think affects independent journalism more, and also how have these laws, how have these restrictions compelled you to take a step back and look at your journalism and how to continue your journalism so that you're not caught up with these charges, and so that you are able to, at the end of the day, continue reporting?
So I think I would say the second tenure of the current government, if it is marked by one feature, one defining thing, that would be intimidation of journalists and activists and also political opposition. I mean, from 2014 to 2019, I mean, there were several things which were not very pleasant, which we reported about. But I think this last 1.5 years has been tremendously stressful, and it has been so difficult to do normal, regular journalism without stressing yourself out, and a lot of our energy and resources and time goes into saving ourselves from going to jail. So it becomes so difficult nowadays just to straight plain reportage on issues. So it's become very stressful. Whenever I'm doing my show, I mean, not that I should not, I should always check my facts, but this time around, for the last several months, I have been checking my facts. And what I say, even after I have recorded maybe at least 5 times over, from 5 different point of views, that how it will be received by people, how it will be received by, say, people in the establishment. So this has become so dangerous. Like doing journalism in India has become, I would say, the most dangerous work at the moment. So this is what the kind of environment that we are living in, for all the freedom, for being the largest democracy of the world. It's becoming more and more difficult, because there is now a very small section of people that is doing journalism the way it should be done. Like, I will give you my example. What I'm doing, trust me, is something very usual. This is not unusual that I've started doing from, say, 2014. I have been a journalist since the year 2000. For 20 years, I have been questioning the government, no matter who was in power, which political party was running the country. I have been questioning people who have power, because with power comes the accountability. And this is the job. This is no favor I'm doing to anyone. This is the job of a journalist to do this. If I wouldn't do this, if I wouldn't ask for accountability, for transparency, if I wouldn't ask questions to people, to people in power, the authority, what am I going to do? What else is there for me to do? So this is the minimum I'm doing. And that is the reason I think sometimes even I get very pleasantly surprised also, that there is so much of praise and admiration is there for people like me, even for doing minimum journalism. I should be doing much more pro-people journalism. I should be doing much more reportage. But the new environment is such that, it's becoming more and more difficult to preserve yourself, to protect yourself, to not come in the way of people who have immense legal power, who have immense power over me. Sometimes I feel like I'm this empowered journalist who is reporting on the biggest political and social um, events around me. But at the same time, at times I feel very, very vulnerable. I feel very disempowered, and I feel that it's only the trust of the common people that gives me confidence. And I go back to the field. I go back to my studio and do my show again. Uh, and I think one of the reasons why it's becoming so difficult is also to do with the fact is that there are the number of people who are still doing the work that they should is gradually decreasing. Um, and that is why, so, the more the merrier. If you have more people doing the same job, it is going to work as protection cover for you. But if there are less people, there is a greater chance of you standing out and get noticed and get in the way of people who as I said, run this country and have immense power over citizens. I mean, whoever I may be a journalist, but I'm after all a citizen of this country.
Absolutely. Santosh, while we have the IT rules now, regulating the social media content, regulation of news media seems, news media giants is still largely a myth. So the NBA has a self-regulatory mechanism and membership, where membership is optional. And there's obviously rampant corruption. We saw how the Republic TV was alleged to have bought TRPs to skew viewership data. And on, looking at that, the other media channels also started copying the content of Republic TV in order to generate profit. So given that the news media financed by corporates and their sole aim becomes money making at the cost of truth, we are left with is inflammatory speeches, hate speech, and state-sponsored narratives with dramatic audio and visual effects. Right? It's almost like watching these daily soaps. So what can be done to bring accountability among these TV channels without taking away the right to free speech? So this is mostly a question of balance between hate speech and free speech.
Okay, so honestly, what TV and electronic media is doing currently, it is a criminal offense, right? What they are doing, they are continuously attacking the very basic democratic ethos of the country. The way they are covering the communal tone and the kind of fascistic tone they are carrying, this is completely criminal and eroding the basic democracy ethos of the country. So we have to do something urgently. When we have imagined our constitution 70 years before, we have not imagined there will be a day come when the media, the fourth pillar of democracy, will be the danger and threat to the democracy itself. And the kind of the provisions government has made earlier and this current regime also, the kind of NBA and Editors Guild of India, they don't have any power. They are completely toothless body. What has been happened in the Gohar Raja case, the G News has been ordered from NBA to so apologize, and they have never done. The similarly case has been happened multiple times with the Times Now as well as the Republic TV. So at the one point of time they have abandoned the membership itself. So there is no mandatory provision to be in the league of the NBA or this. Neither they don't have any NBA or Editors Guild have any power. So when this threat have become so huge, and so there's something has to be done from the constitutional perspective, from the redefining some constitutional protection to the citizen to because it is getting really very dangerous. Despite all this freedom of expressions and all these things, the kind of the Tablighi Jamaat coverage what they have done in a society like us, this is completely it is going to a altogether new different level. And if something will happen tomorrow, the biggest the carrier of this whole miscarriage will be on the burden of electronic and TV media. So I think we have to basically one of the very important thing we have to this kind of the mass movement is giving us the empowerment. Okay, something need to be done, and then the general people have to take this cause. Like Arfa is saying, if there is something has to be done against the new IT rules, the new digital media rules, it should be coming from the peoples itself, because this is not just the media matter, it is not just the civil society matter, it is the general public's matter. So what we have seen in these farmer movements also, they have completely boycotted the Godi media and the mainstream media channel from the very beginning, and they have set up their own media, IT cell, Sanjayukt Kisan Morcha, YouTube and Trolley Times, like a kind of communication channel. And also, what is the very evident in the ground, they are not just fighting on the 3 corporate laws, they are also fighting with the very fascistic tendency of the government. And these are the kind of movement which will be built to pressurize to government to take the constitutional measure to safeguard this country from the fringes of television.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. Thank you. We'll wrap up soon. We have 2 audience questions as well. I think I want to ask the last question from my side would be, what are the main challenges of independent journalism standing today, apart from the things that we discussed? And what can we do about it? Not only independent journalists, but also the public at large.
If you're asking me that question, I think the model of the wire is the way forward. This is the future of journalism in India. So journalism is not going anywhere. Journalism will be, even if in some corner, there will be last few people, but journalism will be, I promise this to people who are attending this conference and also to you, that journalism will be alive and will thrive in India until there are takers for it. And there are millions of people who are takers of independent journalism. It is becoming, as I said, largely, more and more difficult with every passing day. The more terrified, paranoid the establishment is looking at the moment. In fact, the whole idea of making these IT rules is that the government is now very terrified and paranoid of the whole digital media. And so far we were saying that we do not have any impact, or maybe we do not reach as many people as we should. But I think the establishment knows that we are reaching enough people, we have enough impact, and that is why we need to be controlled. So this is, I would say, it's a pat on my back, and this complements my work, that what I'm doing does actually have deep impact. And that's why they are so rattled that they want to use all legal powers that lie with them to control people like me, to control our platform. So I would say public supported, people supported, independent media, community media is the way forward. There may be small platforms, may not be those giant news networks with thousands of people working for them, with studios which run in several million rupees. People like me who have hosted shows from the most expensive studios, not in India but in the world. And now, right now, I record some of my shows in just the setup that I have at the moment: a chair, a phone, a basic light, a mic. I record them and send it to my technical team, and they would broadcast it. So I'm saying that this was also possible. I did not know I could do this. I did not know I could do without a studio. I did not know I could do without 50 people working to put me on air. But this was possible. So I'm saying that this is how, when you meet challenges, then you innovate yourself, you reinvent yourself. After so many years of working with big networks, I reinvented myself to do this pro-people journalism, which was low-cost journalism. So I would say the community media, the community-supported media is the future of Indian journalism. And it is safe.
Yes, I think it reminded me of the Rafale case, and when the government had threatened the media of not, of criminal case against them if they released any documents that they got, regarding the Rafale agreement. And when you said that, it must have been something. There must have been something. Otherwise, why would the government be so, rattled, so frustrated? Absolutely correct. Santosh, do you want to add something regarding what challenges we face today and how we can overcome them, and what independent journalists also expect from us, people like us, because we are, after all, your audience?
Yeah, so like most of the things which we have already discussed and Arpa have already explained, one of the way forward which we are always facing the challenges of the resources and the kind of peoples which we can cover from the multiple points, multiple protest site. But now what we have seen from the last couple of months, and when we are reporting from the uh, ground from for the Kisan Andolan, we can do a collaborative engagement between the different independent media houses. Like we are specialized in the workers terrain, right? We are doing reporting from the trade unions, Mazdoor Sangatans, and laborers from the organized and unorganized sector. And basically we are doing it for last couple of years. For last 10 years we have covered Maruti movement, Honda, Siram, and all big strikes, and always from the different channels. So what I'm thinking at the point of time, we have a very specialization and access and understanding of the labor centered movement. Someone has a better understanding of the Dalit issues. Someone has a better understanding on the maybe the marginal Muslims, or someone have a better understanding and resources and access with the Adivasi and tribal issues. So we should have a collaborative effort where if something is happening on the worker side, we can lend our support. We can do insourcing for them, and because we are really struggling with the resources and people. So the way we should. Most of the big international media is also doing the investigative journalism collaborative effort. We should also do some kind of collaboration where the repetition will not happen and everyone will have their own expertization and access, and in that sense we can have proliferate our amplify our voices into a more bigger way.
That's an excellent thought, and I think I would go wholeheartedly with what Santosh is saying, that collaboration is the way forward. Competition, of course, there should be healthy competition to break the news first, to do more people-centric journalism, to get more traction, and it's a good idea to do healthy, to be in an environment of healthy competition. But I think collaboration is the way forward. I totally go with what Santosh is saying.
I hope we provide a platform for that collaboration. I think we have I think we have two audience questions. One is, I think the first one is directed at Arpa. Can you share your experience working on ground as a woman, and whether you faced any challenges from a gendered perspective?
Yes and no. I would say when I go to these mass movements, then I feel the safest. I feel I am, among the people that I should have been. And so not really. But yes, I feel vulnerable and maybe as a woman when it comes to taking on the mighty. But on the contrary, people should think that I should feel more vulnerable, but I feel as a woman, it is my responsibility that I should be more empathetic, that I should have a kinder heart, that I should have a more pro-people approach. This should be expected from me as being a woman than a man. So I feel all the contrary, I feel all the more responsible. I feel all the more, a certain pressure on me to deliver better, to do better. And also to think from the perspective of people who have always struggled. And this also empowers me, my experience of being a woman and having lived for a few decades, experience of not just being a woman journalist, but also being a woman, that I've seen it all. I have seen what discrimination feels like. I have seen what injustices feel like. I have seen what oppression feels like. So I come from a place where I have a lived experience of injustices, oppression, inequality, denial, which makes me stronger, more empathetic, and more, I would say, people-centric. So I think being a woman is my power rather than my weakness.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think, only the oppressed understands what other oppressed feel like. And only when we join forces can there be some sort of, forward movement.
Also, a lot of times people say, oh, you are the hero. I said, before being a hero, I am a survivor. I am, first of all, I'm a survivor of communal violence. I am a survivor of, religious discrimination. I am a survivor of gender discrimination. I am a survivor of digital divide. I am a survivor of so much that could have easily killed me. So I have survived all of this. Before, calling me a hero, I think call me a survivor, because that takes a lot more than becoming a hero. And being a woman kind of added much more to my struggles than what it could have been, because our systems, our structures are not essentially designed for women.
Completely. I think that takes us to our last question. What inspired you to take this up? And I think this is directed to both you and Santosh. Santosh, would you like to go first? And I know you have a corporate background, so you left that and you came and you joined independent journalism. What inspired you? What motivated you?
Okay, so when I was a student, I was studying mathematical statistics in BHU, Banaras University. So I was very much attracted to the workers' movement, leaders, and trade union movements. I came to Delhi in 2007 and joined big corporate houses. And for last 13 years, I am doing a medical research job. By training, I'm a biostatistician. So, but I've always been in touch with the grounds, and I used to go Gurgaon basically when it started in Honda movement in 2005, and then Gregiano Maruti movement happened in 2011-12, and then so I was keep doing some kind of notes and reporting, not as a journalist, but as a part-time activist. I was reporting and documenting all this workers movement. Last year, like Arfa said, we don't know there is a possibility of low cost journalism. We can do journalism with the microphone and a smart mobile. So I was doing, so one of our colleague, Sandeep, who is founder of the workers community, was doing it. So last year at the height of Corona, when the medical research becoming very important, and I was doing a job of a biostatistician, I suddenly realized this is not I want to do. I want to do journalism from the workers' perspective, and there is a platform, Workers Unity. So I quit my job last year, in mid of pandemic, and started more serious journalism on the workers' perspective, because I have been exposed to the workers' conditions, trade union movement, the labor law changes, and all these things. So what inspired me to do this is basically I don't find much of the resource and information, because there is no labor bit on either in electronic media or in the press. So I was whenever I used to write some kind of article or maybe some stories for some other web portal, I don't find any channel. The second thing that when I used to visit Gurgaon and trade unions colleagues, I saw there is no content available from the working class perspective. Most of the time they see you on WhatsApp and Facebook in the same seat which the IT cell and the Hindu media is propagating. And the solution is to provide them the content to the working class movement, to their struggles, to their story. So I think this is the right time. We should start a channel to the worker centric, to provide their stories, to explain their labor policies in a bit very simple way, not in academic manner. So we have started like this, and to provide the content to the workers, as well as to bridge the gap between the big houses or big independent houses, to provide more labor and academic stories from the ground. Yeah, that was my inspiration.
Thank you, Santosh. Arfa, would you like to take it up?
Well, I think I wouldn't have been anyone else. I couldn't have done anything else other than what I'm doing right now. I was born to do what I'm doing right now. I feel so passionate about, I'm designed to be where I am and what I'm doing. From early on in my life, I come from a small town. I saw so much of violence, oppression, anti-women, anti-minority, anti-poor mentality, and I saw they had no voice. Nobody even knew that they were going through so much. And there was a certain helplessness that I felt, though I come from a family where, it was not very usual for me to take up journalism as a career. Like when I announced to my father that I wanted to become a journalist, he said, "Hum tumhare liye akhbar nikal denge." Matlab, you don't need to really go and work as a journalist. We will start our own newspaper. So, that kind of a thing. So I'm a first journalist in my family, and I come from, I would say, a family of zamindars. But at the same time, belonging to a small town, there was so much that I saw that this is what I report about. And when I speak to people, I feel that I can very well relate to them because I'm one of them. I am them. It is just one of them who's just got the power of a microphone and a camera, that I tell their stories in the language that they understand. And I have this power in me to understand what they're going through, what their struggles are, what their aspirations are, where they want to be, what they have been, what they want to be. So I'm saying that, this was a very natural choice for me. Especially when I came here to Delhi, the first job was offered to me was of a news anchor. And this was very natural. This was not even expected from me that I would be interested in reporting and leave aside even reporting for the marginalized. And I would be talking about people who live on the margins of Indian democracy. But more and more, when I got a chance to interact with people, I realized that it was so important to my work. And I find, this pride in my work makes me get up every day and do what I do, despite all the intimidation, threats, and everything around me, because I feel I'm so important. My work is so important. What are the people going to do without me? So, all of this fills me with so much energy every day that I feel, no, you were born to do this, and nobody else but you can do this. And that is what makes this connection between me and my audience so strong. As I said, that there is no, that I don't come from this high place where I am this, Western suit wearing woman from the expensive studios talking about, I'm one of them. And that is why the whole idea, I don't even pretend to be something else or someone else. So I feel I am at the right place where I should have been. It's just that I need to do more, be more, because there is so much more to say. There is so much more to do. And also, I just don't have to do what I'm supposed to do, but also have to do so much more that others are not doing, that other journalists are not doing. There's so many people who do not have a voice. So I do not want to be their voice, but I want to be somebody who enables them to raise their voice. So I think I feel fortunate, very, very fortunate that I have this power, and I feel very responsible, this very unique responsibility on me to carry on with what I'm doing every day.
Thank you so much. I think we have come to the end of our discussion, and I'm absolutely inspired. And it was amazing to talk to all three of you. Sudarshana is not here, but I think it was very enriching for the audience and for one another as well. I think we learned a lot from what you said, and thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you. It was lovely. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Bye.
Bye.
See you.
Bye. 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 Bye.